Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It's a real beautiful thing, huh? Of course you saw the thumbnail, so automatically you understand the context. This Bud Light boycott, man, it has been just an incredible journey. After years of failure in the cultural sphere, arguably on both sides, it's been hard to have a lasting impact. It's been hard to actually make change. Major corporations, powerful entities, simply do what they want and don't exactly take the consumer or the people's opinions too seriously most of the time. Well, I think we have changed that and changed that for good. No longer are they underestimating our influence. No longer are they scoffing at the idea of a consumer backlash. It's one wrong step and you jeopardize everything that you stand for, everything that you've built, and honestly, that's really the way that it ought to be. And I don't mean that in the way of typical cancel culture. You know, if a company comes out with a small political message or stance, even if a company's CEO comes out and endorses Joe Biden, like the Goya Foods CEO endorsed Donald Trump, big deal, not worth a boycott. But when you take it too far, when you really cross boundaries that should not be crossed, like Target and Bud Light did this year, there should no longer be an expectation that it'll just be a little blip on the radar and then back to normal. That's the standard we've set. That's really what we've been focused on. I've been saying it for months. And now we even have legendary figures like Ron Paul on his podcast singing praise over what we've been able to accomplish. In other words, Joe Rogan joined the boycott. The TikTok influencer at the core of this whole controversy, even in a way, joined the boycott. And now Ron Paul joins the boycott. In other words, this thing's still going strong. We are winning. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on, the latest update. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, Ron Paul seems to be impressed with what we've been able to accomplish.
The thing that impresses me is it's so successful, the boycott, because boycotts have been tried before. Conservatives, religious groups have tried boycotts, and they never gone anywhere. It's unbelievable to me that they could get the attention of Disney, and get the attention of Target, and all these companies that, and then they're so blind. They have no intention of changing. Budweiser, they come up with a new manager and he doesn't do anything differently.
Yeah. Bud Light sales suffered a major decline over the July 4th holiday weekend. As the boycott against the brand continues, Bud Light sales plunged by 23.6% in 1 week, ending July 8th compared to 22, according to Nielsen IQ dollar sales data provided to the Daily Caller. So they have absolutely cratered. It shows no sign of slowing. As you point out, it is almost like a David and Goliath because boycotts tend to not work that well. I think two factors I would suggest, Dr. Paul. Number one, Americans are very tolerant, but I think they do reach a breaking point where they've had enough. And this stuff has been shoved in their face for long enough, they finally said, I can do something about it.
And what he said right there, I think, is probably the most important thing here. It's undeniable. I think everyone is able to see that this boycott has been beyond successful, immensely successful. Everyone, including insiders, including all the doubters, didn't expect for this grassroots consumer movement to not only be able to achieve what it has achieved, but to go on for so long. Where we last left off with Bud Light was the data heading directly into the July 4th weekend. Well, now we have the July 4th weekend data itself, and it's pretty much exactly what we expected. During a massive holiday weekend where you'd expect beer companies to be bringing in bank, it seems like there was only one company that wasn't invited to the profits bonanza. Of course, Bud Light. Bud Light sales collapse over 4th of July weekend. Bud Light continues to get absolutely destroyed since the company went woke. Sales dropped a staggering 23.6% for the week ending in July 8th compared to a year ago, according to Nielsen IQ data provided by Bump Williams Consulting via the New York Post. That covers 4th of July weekend, a weekend that generally would have had Bud Light flowing, instead saw a huge decline. The decline wasn't as bad as the week prior, but important context, it was July 4th. Any reduction in sales volume over July 4th weekend is disastrous to say the least. A nearly 24% sales decline is essentially worst case scenario. The sheer persistence here has been unbelievable. In fact, it's nearly been a month, if I'm not mistaken, since Bud Light decided to take back to Twitter. Bud Light's marketing team trying to reestablish their Twitter presence and social media presence. But again, the sheer persistence, it doesn't end. The Daily Mail reports Bud Light's social media accounts are being slammed with abuse after resuming regular posting since the woke backlash. Quote, "I'd rather drink urine." The headlines themselves continue to produce good laughs, huh? No matter what happens, Bud Light just can't stop sinking. They're in a metaphorical sinkhole, unable to get back to solid ground, no matter what happens. In fact, recently they got some public PR for the first time in over a month, in multiple months actually. Charles Barkley takes aim at, quote, "rednecks and a-holes" in explicit Bud Light speech at bar. Take a look, although we'll have to censor the profanity due to YouTube's algorithm.
This. I want y'all to drink this. I want y'all to drink this here. I got 3 cases of Bud Light. Hey, and I want to say this. If you're gay, bless you. If you're transgender, bless you. And if you have a problem with that,
And even with Charles Barkley, Sir Charles Barkley, the White Knight, coming in leaping to their defense, well, it fell flat. All respect to Charles Barkley, he's one of my favorite basketball players and definitely one of my favorite media figures. And I respect his opinion, but again, this defense of Bud Light or this counter outrage, they're simply missing the mark. They simply don't get it. The Bud Light boycott has absolutely nothing to do with lack of acceptance, intolerance, bigotry. If that was the case, then Bud Light and frankly every other company would have received the Bud Light treatment, or what is now known as the Bud Light treatment, years ago. I mean, they've been doing pride campaigns for nearly a decade at this point. The issue is obviously a little bit more complex than just rednecks and a-holes being intolerant and launching a boycott for bigotry purposes and bigotry purposes alone. You know, in regards to the TikTok individual that caused this consumer boycott to begin with, it really never had anything to do with the person's actual identity, and all to do with the actions of said individual. I don't have to do any flashbacks or give a history lesson on why people weren't thrilled that this person was now a brand ambassador, but of course the most obvious issue that Bud Light was facing had to do with what I guess we could describe as a consumer disconnect. The Bud Light VP essentially doing what Charles Barkley did in that clip, describing their core consumers as frat boys, essentially describing Bud Light consumers as unsophisticated, and trying to replace them with a new brand image, which outside of the whole controversy surrounding that person in the first place, was a big slap in the face to every Bud Light drinker. Well, not every Bud Light drinker, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. They just don't get it. Bud Light doesn't get it, and people who leap to the defense of Bud Light simply don't get it. And that's why, of course, indefinitely, perpetually, and that's the most impressive part, huh? People standing by their beliefs, standing by their values, and putting their money where their mouth is. Now that is based. Get woke, go broke. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.